I mean, the standards aren't super high. Her color palette is literally the opposite. My brain made it an issue because it couldn't process. I don't know how I feel about that. It's not because he's black. I had an ugly baby. Yeet. It was absolutely great. We're turning this into a dual review. Hi guys, welcome back to another Nerd Rants video. You probably know what's coming, cause I told you it was coming. The last episode of season 1 of the Percy Jackson show came out on Wednesday. I told you it'd come out the week of, so here we are to review that. Overall, it was good, and I mean, the standards aren't super high because the movie was bad. We don't talk about the movie. A lot of us like to ignore the fact that it exists because, yeah. But, so, yeah, the standards aren't super high for what is the word I'm looking for? Like a live action cinematic version of Percy Jackson, so they're not super high, but it was honestly better than I was expecting it to be. I was excited that it was happening, but it was also like being made by Disney and all that, so I didn't have super high hopes about it. Like, I was still excited that it was a thing and that it was coming out, but yeah. And then when I started seeing more and more of the casting and seeing that literally the color palette of just about every single main character is like the opposite of what it was in the book, my brain couldn't like come to terms with that. Especially when I was like just seeing pictures and whatever of the cast. So my brain was going, no, because we have Percy going from this black-haired, green-eyed kid to blonde hair, blue eyes. His is probably the least polar opposite of the ones that I'm thinking of. But yeah, him being blonde was like, it was very hard to process for the first little bit. Like, I got into it because his personality is wonderful, and Walker Scobell did amazing. But yeah, it took me like an episode to get into my brains. Like, yep, that's Percy. He's just blonde now. It's fine. He's just blonde now. So yeah, and then I feel like my brain is still coming to terms with the fact that Annabeth is just black. She went from, in the books, being this white, blonde, gray-eyed girl to now, in the show, she is black, dark hair, dark eyes. And it's just the most polar opposite thing. Her color palette is literally the opposite of what it was described as in the books. And I have no issues with Leah Jeffries. She did great as Annabeth. But my brain was fighting very hard to come to terms with the fact that she was Annabeth, because I spent however many years, you know, having read and whatever, being in this fandom, imagining Annabeth as blonde and gray eyes and whatever else, and just, she's not. Leah Jeffries is just not that appearance-wise. And so I think the only one that I really got out of the main cast that just like straight up looked like how I imagined was Grover. It's like Arian something? I don't know. But anyway, like, he's the only one that like looks at least close to how I imagined his character. Because even Luke went from a blonde, blue-eyed kid to black hair and brown eyes, it looked like. Just like, Charon's black now, Zeus is black now. Yeah, we're just gonna get into this. We already got into it. The one of the biggest things that I won't say I had an issue with, but like the biggest things that kept coming up, that either were an issue or like my brain made it an issue because it couldn't process whatever was the casting. The casting was not bad, but there are definitely several characters, like, no main ones, but several characters, especially among, like, the Olympians, where the casting was just sort of meh. And I didn't care. I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. It doesn't quite click well with the character. Like, Walker, it took me an episode to process the fact that he was blonde, but, like, his personality and whatever else clicked immediately with Percy. And Grover, or Arian, whatever, he did really good as Grover, and it clicked in him being awkward and whatever else, and it fit super well. Leah Jeffries did good as Annabeth. It definitely took me an episode or two to, like, this sounds really bad, but accept the fact that she was black. It took a while for my brain to go, nope, this is Annabeth Chase. This is the character. You know that you keep bringing up the wrong image in your head, and it's really hard to reconcile those two. But eventually, like, when I got into the show a little bit more, I was like, okay, yes, it's fine. The casting is good. It's just so hard to reconcile the image I have in my head with the casting choice. And yeah, again with Luke, and we didn't get enough of Luke's character, in my opinion. They kind of messed with timing or whatever else, which we'll get into after we talk about casting. And so we didn't get a whole lot of Luke. And so we didn't get a whole lot of him and Percy's relationship, which made the betrayal at the end not quite as meaningful, I feel like, because you didn't get as much of their relationship as we do in the books. And so you're betrayed by one who calls you friend, but it's like, okay, but we didn't really get enough of them interacting to, like, for their relationship to really feel like they were friends. But, like, Luke's casting was good. He did a good job with what little screen time they gave him. I don't know the actor's name. Sorry, I only know the main three. But anyway, he did good. It did take me, again, like, an episode to come to reconcile the fact that he has black hair now. Like, he and Percy were swapped. And it took me a little bit to, like, come to terms with the fact that they had different they had the swapped color palettes. That was, like, the biggest thing in the first few episodes. Like, nope, that is this character. I am imagining them very differently, but that in my head from the years in the fandom, but that is this character. But yeah. I'm not a biggest fan of Chiron, honestly, in this one. I don't know what it is. It's not because he's black. I will lead off with that. It is not because he is black, but I just don't know. The way the actor portrays Chiron doesn't really click with me as Chiron. I don't know what it is. I legitimately don't. And they made his horse half not white. Because the whole thing is like he's this big white stallion thing. And you could have a black character with, you know, with a white horse butt. It's not impossible. Maybe it doesn't look as good. I don't know. That's a nitpick. I'm sorry. That's a really, really niche nitpick. Yeah. So I don't know how I feel about Chiron's actor yet. I'm also not sure about Zeus's. Like, he did good. He was, I don't know. I feel like because we only get like one scene with him, so that's probably part of it. And the intensity is there, but I feel like almost the writing in that scene wasn't quite up to snuff or something, because there was almost a disconnect in the scene. Like, the intensity's there, but the way the dialogue goes, it almost doesn't quite mesh. I don't know. But yeah, it could have been a little bit with the writing and a little bit with the fact that we get one scene with him. But I'm not sure about Zeus's casting either. And I'm really, really sorry that it happens to coincide that those two characters are played by black actors. I promise you that is a coincidence and not an actual reason. It just happens to be that way. They're not the only casting I have an issue with. Hephaestus, again, we only get one scene with him. So it's part of it, probably. And he's halfway in the dark, so I don't get to see the full actor anyway, but I don't know how I feel about it. Like, it didn't click with me that it's Hephaestus. I was like, oh, random guy, and then they went through the conversation and you get him revealing that, oh, he's Hephaestus. I'm like, oh, okay. It didn't, like, that's Hephaestus in my brain. I almost wanted him to be uglier, I guess, because the whole thing is Hera chucks him off Olympus because, like, oh, I had an ugly baby. Yeet. But I don't know. The dude just had a cane and looked older than the other gods. I was, like, almost expecting more of a deformity or something. But no, we didn't get that, so whatever. So that didn't click with me. I was like, whatever. He's there for one scene. I don't even know. I can't remember a time where Hephaestus actually shows up in the Percy Jackson series. Like, can anyone else actually remember a scene in the books where Hephaestus is there and, like, does something? Because if he's not, then there's a probability that this guy just won't really show up again except as a background in maybe 1 or 2 scenes. And I'd be fine with that because his casting seemed very meh to me, or that, or they have to do something to make him look less. I don't have actually a word to go after that. More deformed, I guess? I don't know. I wanted him to be uglier, and that sounds weird. I wanted him to be uglier. Yeah. Also, you know, guys, I'm not sure how I feel about Lin-Manuel Miranda being Hermes. I was very much not expecting it. I didn't really keep up with any news about casting the end or whatever, or pretty much anything that happened with the show except the release date, and I knew what the main cast looked like. That was it. That's all I knew beforehand, and then I just went into it. So I was not at all expecting Lin-Manuel Miranda to be Hermes. I don't know. He's not a bad actor, but I feel like this is a very different feel and style to literally anything else he's ever been in. And so that in itself was enough to basically jump scare me when it was revealed that he was Hermes. I was like, wait a minute, what? I mean, he shows up in a little post-credit thing as bringing Medusa's head to Olympus, and I was like, cool. And it's like, it processed but also didn't process that, oh, then I guess he's Hermes. Like, it didn't... I knew, but I also didn't. I don't know. It clicked in my brain that that he probably was, but it was subconscious, and so consciously I was like not aware of the fact that, oh, that means he's Hermes. And so he shows up at the Lotus Hotel casino, and I'm just like, wait, what? He actually is? And just, okay. It's just, it's a thing. I don't know how to feel about it. He didn't do bad. I just, like, it felt almost wrong for him to be there. If that makes any sense. It just kind of felt wrong. I don't know. I don't picture him as Hermes. I almost would have pictured him more as Apollo. But you know, is what it is. He's definitely gonna show up more because it's Hermes. He does. I just, maybe it'll get better over time. I don't know, but I don't know if I like it. I really don't. What other? They meet like half of the Olympians in the first season. Hades. I don't like the casting for Hades. The portrayal of his character, in my opinion, is not good. I don't like how this guy portrayed him. He's almost too, like, flamboyant? That's the word that comes to mind. It's probably not quite right, but that's the word that comes to mind. He's almost, I don't know. The Hades we get in the books is a very serious, like the most grounded Olympian of literally all of them. And he is not that in this. He like, he's almost too perky. I don't know how to describe it besides flamboyant and perky. I don't know, but it was like too happy. He was too upbeat of a character, and he wasn't as intense as he should have been as like the Lord of the Underworld. And then they had a whole scene. It's like, oh, they have like the realization that Cronus is involved. Cronus is responsible, actually, and Hades is supposed to be like afraid and going, oh, okay, in that case, give me the bolt and I'll protect you and your mother. He didn't give off a huge, like, terrified vibe. His mood didn't seem to change a whole lot. Which is like, no, the realization that your father is trying to rise out of Tartarus and now going, okay, I'll protect you and your family if you give me this bolt so that I can mostly protect myself. And I want this insurance policy. And like his mood doesn't shift. He doesn't have like the, oh crap, like the desperation I feel like that was necessary for the scene. Especially when they go back later and we have Percy going like, did you see how like terrified Hades was? We need to tell Zeus that Cronus is rising. Like, he wasn't really that scared. He made you a deal, and he had like the exact same tone as before, except, you know, maybe slightly more serious. Yeah, I think Hades was probably my least favorite casting choice. There were several that were just meh. I don't know how I feel about this. They didn't get enough screen time, so again, I'm not sure. And then there was Hades, and I was like, nope. You get like two, 3 scenes. I just, no, I don't like you. He shouldn't show up too much anymore. Maybe if he does, they'll fix him, but like, no, I didn't like him at all. Them having that conversation with him was probably my least favorite part of the entire season. I just like, no. But we'll move on to casting that I did like, because yes, I'm dissing all of these other characters. I don't hate all of the casting choices. I explained I like the main 3. Luke did a good job. It took me a bit to come to terms with the fact that all of their color palettes were switched, but it's fine. They did great. But I also love Sally's casting. She did good. I love the flashbacks we got with her and young Percy were great, and seeing all of that was very fun, and I got, like, getting more Sally was cool. But I also feel like at the same time we didn't get more Sally. Like, we got more screen time for Sally Jackson, but we got less depth almost, because her whole thing in the books is, I am working this dead-end job to make ends meet, and I married this absolute douche of a man because he stinks and will hide my son's scent. I'm doing this to protect you. I am putting aside my dream to become an artist and a sculptor so that I can protect you. And we got all of that. We didn't get any of that in the show. We don't know. I don't know where she worked. I don't know what she did. And I had no idea what her hopes and dreams are and all these things that she gave up to Percy. We didn't get any of that. We didn't get to see or get to, like, yeah. She went to Hades, and we see some of like the struggles she has when he's a kid, but we don't see a whole lot beyond that of the sacrifice that she made. Like, she gave up pretty much her entire life, married a douchebag, and gave up her dream to protect Percy, and we didn't get to see that in the show, at least in the first season, which was really sad, because that's like the best part of her character, is the fact that she gives up literally everything to protect Percy. So not getting that was a little sad, but the actress did well, and there's potential they could touch back on it in later seasons. But like, yeah, that crucial little, like, I sacrifice everything for my son wasn't quite as prevalent as it is in the books. So hopefully they'll dig more into that aspect of her character, because that is her character. So yeah, I was missing that, but the actress did great. Young Percy was pretty good. I do wish they could just they could just have a time machine and bring young Walker in, because Walker is literally perfect. And I watched The Adam Project because I watched the first few episodes of Percy Jackson and went, Walker's a good actor. And I also was hearing all of the random things while he was, people were finding out he was getting cast. Like, yes, he's perfect, blah, 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 referencing Adam Project. So I went and I watched it. Like, it was great. It was absolutely great. We're turning this into a dual review. The Adam Project was wonderful. Walker Scobell and Ryan Reynolds are they're perfect for playing different timeline versions of themselves. It's good. It's such a fun movie. And Walker does amazing. And just, I don't know, it's so good. And like family dynamics and how those two interact. I mean, there were just a bunch of random big name actors in this. I had never heard of this movie, but we had like Mark Ruffalo, Zoe Saldana, Ryan Reynolds. It's not Julia Roberts. I can't remember the actress's name right now, but the one who plays his mom. They're just all of these very recognizable actors in this random Netflix movie that I'd never heard of. But it was great. It was one of those hidden gems on Netflix. Yeah. So, yeah. Going back and having that just cemented the fact that, yes, Walker Scobell is fantastic, as is a great Percy. And I really wish they could have just, like, brought tiny Walker onto the set to play younger version of Percy. But the kid who did a good job. Yeah. Oh, who else do I have to talk about? Clarice. I really liked Clarice. Her casting, I think, was perfect. Because the moment we had an interaction with her, I knew they clicked right away. I'm like, yep, that's Clarice. That is a wonderful casting choice, because that is Clarice. And it was wonderful. It was so good. She did amazing. She gets very little screen time, which is a crime, because she's fantastic. Also, wonderful casting, like, on point, Ares. Ares' casting was fantastic. I think he and Clarice's casting were the most spot on of literally anyone in the cast. Because not only were they, like, spot on, it clicked right away, this is their character, they also kept the book appearance, so, like, well, for the most part. Clarice, not quite as much. But I don't know how I envision Clarice in the books. Probably not how, like, she canon in the books looks. That's probably not how I envision her. But the casting for Clarice, like, it clicked right away. I'm like, oh yeah, that's totally Clarice. That could be Clarice. The casting, like, that could be Clarice. And the Ares, just perfect. I loved Ares. He did fantastic. He was wonderful. It made me really, really sad that the last battle between him and Percy was short, because I just wanted more of him. He was so good. And the other one, Poseidon. I really like Poseidon's casting. I'm not sure about his accent yet. Like, I don't know if that's the actor's original accent or if he chose to have that accent. I can't place it though. I cannot place the accent. But whatever, it's fine. It was only really like, wait, what, is he speaking in an accent in that first scene with flashback with him and Sally? I was just like, wait a second, is Poseidon talking in an accent? And then it was a little weird, and then when we have the final scene with him, it's like, okay, it's less noticeable and less jarring now because I know it's coming. But the best part is Poseidon is played by the same actor who plays John Robinson in Lost in Space, and I am all for it. He walked on screen, I went, no way! And I recognized it right away because me and my boyfriend are currently watching through Lost in Space. And so right away I'm like, no way! It's John Robinson! I am so down for this! And he did great. I love it. He went from playing a super wholesome, protective space dad to like, again, very wholesome, but like involuntarily said what, I don't know what words I'm looking for, but Poseidon, who I don't know why, it just two dad characters, and it's great. He plays a dad so freaking well. Oh, he was probably, okay, those three were probably my favorites. Clarice, Ares, and Poseidon were probably my three favorite casting choices. They were so good, and Walker goes up there as well because the personality is so spot on, but the other three go over him because their appearances so seamlessly come out of the books. Not, again, I know Clarice doesn't actually look like that, but I could so easily envision her character looking like that in the book. I didn't have a super defined image of what Clarice looked like, but the actress could fit right into that. I feel like, I don't know, whatever was bouncing around in my head for what Clarice looks like, the actress could kind of just seamlessly slide into that. I don't know, but yeah, those are probably the best casting choices. It was so good. Okay, I rambled on for a half an hour about this. We're gonna move on to the other okay, this one is an actual issue I had with the show. This one is an actual issue. The season was 8 episodes long. It should have been 10. It should have had 2 more episodes, one on the end and one at the beginning, because the pacing at the very beginning in the first 2 episodes and at the very end in the last 2 episodes was very rushed and anticlimactic because they were trying to fit everything in, but they had this limited time span and they didn't give themselves the time to go into all these different things that they were just throwing in there. And so the first episodes, especially because they are trying to fit in 2 weeks of camp and discovery and all of that and relationships into really 1 episode. So it was very jarring and anticlimactic, and it felt very rushed. And then, yeah, the end, they rushed through the underworld in 1 episode, and again, I didn't like Hades' portrayal, so that doesn't help, but I feel like they rushed through that, and were just they got into the underworld and out of the underworld in 1 episode. I feel like they should have spent a decent amount of time in 1 episode getting into the underworld and getting through the security and getting through into the fields of Asphodel, and then taking another episode to get them going through Asphodel, having the encounter at the Pit of Tartarus with Cronus and Luke's shoes, and then getting to the palace and negotiating and whatever else with Hades. And then end a 2nd episode of the underworld with them being on the beach and about to face Ares. That, I feel would have been better. And then we could have taken... I also wish that fight with Ares and Percy had been longer, because it was a 1 scene thing. Ares showed up, Percy goes, I challenge you to single combat. If I draw first blood, I win. I get the helm and I get to keep the bolt. I say, okay, cool. Challenge him to single combat. Great. Let's do it. They, Percy gets the crap beaten out of him quite a bit, gets thrown into a puddle, and then there's this massive wave that comes down and knocks Ares off his feet so Percy can just, slash the back of his leg. It's not a bad fight, but I wish it had been longer and they'd had more struggle. And I think the biggest pet peeve I have with the show is that Percy never has, he doesn't have, I go into the water and get stronger with my fighting and, just physically stronger and my instincts kick in a little more when I get to the water. Because his first fight with Clarice during Capture the Flag, where, he breaks his spear and she breaks her spear and gets claimed, he never actually makes it to the water. He gets near the water and then his fighting improves, but he never actually goes into the water until Annabeth shoves him and his wounds get healed. And my whole thing when I watched that episode was I really wish they hadn't cut that out and cut the Hellhound fight out. Come on, I wanted the Hellhound to come out of nowhere and beat the crap out of him and give him more of a reason to throw him in the water. I'm okay with them cutting out the Hellhound thing now. Now that I've processed and see how the show goes, it's fine. That's fine and I get it. But cutting out the part where he gets better and his instincts improve and his strength increases when he touches and gets into the water, that I feel was a mistake. They should have had him get backed into the water, his foot splashes down, and he suddenly gets this revitalization through his entire body and he can actually attack. And then you could still have, because he doesn't necessarily have to be standing in the water the whole time. They could have that and have the realization of I'm stronger in the water, and then gets forced out. He breaks her spear and, he's still injured. So Annabeth still has to shove him in the water in order to heal his wounds and get him claimed. That would have been so much better to me, because water and him interacting with water and how it revitalizes him and how it strengthens him is a very key part of his character and his powers. And so I feel they took that out almost entirely, and it's missing something. He needs to be in the water, and I get fighting in water and filming and whatever in water is probably really, really hard. But they also had a budget. It's a Disney show. They had a budget. They had to CGI a Chimera and a Fury and Medusa. They had to CGI all of these creatures, and why can't you just... They had to CGI him breathing underwater for a scene, and this water nymph lady that acts as a messenger for Poseidon. There was so much that they had to CGI. Why couldn't you just fight in the shallows of a beach? If you're gonna go through the effort of CGIing the entirety of Olympus and all of these mythical creatures that you're bringing in, why can't you just have him fight in the shallows on the beach? But they didn't, and that aggravates me a little bit. He needs to get more into the interacting with water, and that makes him stronger, and whatever else. That needs to happen in future seasons, because that is a very integral and important part of his character. He's not just a hero, he's the son of Poseidon. And we don't get enough of him interacting with water and showing that he is a son of Poseidon. We get a giant wave, and yes, but he's also nowhere near the water line, and so it makes less sense. It would have been great if Ares had thrown him, he went into the shallows, and then have the waves, the water behind him, because he gets thrown more. I don't know if it's supposed to be the shallows and the water is technically behind him, but he's thrown into a puddle. He's just straight up thrown into a puddle, and then the water in 20 feet behind him is the shoreline where the water stops, and then 30 feet beyond that is where the wave starts coming. And no, it doesn't feel as connected, I guess. If he was in the water and in the shallows on that shoreline, it almost would have flowed better and made more sense for this than wave about 20, 30 20 to 40 feet out into the water to rise up behind him, because he's literally in the water where the wave is coming out of, instead of just, I splashed in a puddle and now there's this massive tidal wave. I wish they'd thrown him into the shallows of water for both of those fights and shown then how he reacts to the water and have that connection between it. But they didn't do that. So that needs to happen in future seasons. That was probably, now that I'm talking and ranting about it, probably my biggest issue. But yeah, pacing. We were talking about pacing. So yeah, in the first episode, obviously, discovers he's a half-blood, gets to Camp Half-Blood. So we have the entirety of fighting the Fury, the whole Mrs. Dodds doesn't exist, you're nuts conversation, getting introduced to Gabe, who never really shows up again except for an interview. That was another thing. Gabe's whole thing didn't get resolved with like, oh, here mom, have a Medusa head. It's a do-it-yourself sculpture kit. Just kills Gabe. And then the whole police thing. Because they're wanted. They are wanted by the police, and they show that in the 4th episode with the St. Louis Arch. And we got Gabe on TV in the 5th one going, I never thought he'd do this, blah, blah, blah. Apparently he's a really troubled, bad kid. And we have that happening in the lead up into episode 5, and then it kind of gets dropped for episode 6 and 7, whatever. It's like, okay, yeah, you're focusing on the quest. It's not going to be a huge deal. But then there's nothing that happens with it in the climax. Like, there's no reference to them getting clemency or whatever, because, oh yeah, it's Aries' fault, not Percy. So that doesn't get resolved, and Gabe never gets turned. We don't get any hint or proof that Gabe gets turned into stone. So that's unresolved, and that's a little annoying too. But yeah, first episode, that one was pretty decent pacing. The battle with the Fury was a little anticlimactic, because we have her just do it in public and then, and he dies. And that's about it. I feel like it's a little more dramatic when it's like, hey, let me separate you. Let me tell you all these really creepy things about you, about yourself that you don't understand because you don't actually know who you are. And then transformation, attack, run. I don't know, a little bit longer or something. I don't know. It seemed a little anticlimactic to me. Maybe that was the point. I did appreciate her transforming, and like as kids passed, more and more of her Fury self was revealed. But yeah, I don't know. That one seemed a little anticlimactic, maybe a little rushed. And then, yeah, the rest of it was paced pretty well for the first episode. The second episode was really the one I had an issue with because they tried to cram like 2 weeks worth of camp into one 40-minute episode. And so we had like the whole toilet incident, we had introductions, we had capture the flag, we had his being claimed, we had him getting his quest, all in one episode. And I wish they had split that up so they could have gotten more into the things, like drawn out him getting to know the different campers, had, again, like the toilet scene seemed a little anticlimactic, which I guess, like, it's sudden, there's shock, but I don't know. The feel of it, it was like, it started, it happened, and then it was done. And it, like, they didn't call him Supreme Lord of the Toilet at any point. That was a whole thing. Like, it doesn't get referenced a whole lot, which I think is probably part of the reason that it becomes so anticlimactic, is because it's over and then it's just over. But yeah, like, drawn out that joke or whatever for a little while longer to build up Clarice's grudge against him, and had like an entire episode dedicated pretty much to the capture the flag game. That would have been great. I always want more capture the flag, and then we could have had more of a fight with Percy and Clarice. We could have had him going into the water to get stronger and then breaking it and then all of that stuff. And had more time to, after the fact, with that episode, draw out and get into the, oh, you have a quest side of it. And then in the episode then prior to the capture the flag and whatever else, building relationships and getting a set, like the groundwork basically set up for relationships and the world building and the Camp Half-Blood in general. That would have been great, because I don't know, it almost catered more to the book fans, because it's just like, oh, things happened, this is from the book, they didn't do this in the movie, and so it just like, all the things happened. But if you haven't read the books and you have no intention of doing that, like, I don't know, I feel like we're cutting out maybe some important explanation scenes, important like relationship development stuff. They do a lot of telling about Annabeth and Luke's relationship. Like, oh, we're like brother and sister, we want to run together, blah, 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 Thalia, whatever. But we don't get a lot of showing with that. Like, I don't think Annabeth and Luke interact until the last episode when they get back from camp. I legitimately think they do not interact until that moment. And it's just like, okay, that is not how this is supposed to work. They have made, I think they have like a 2 to 4 sentence interaction during Capture the Flag where she's like, hey, you know what to do? And he's like, yeah, and then runs off and she takes Percy somewhere. That's it. And then at the end of the season. And like, that is not enough to build up this relationship that we're supposed to feel between them, because they are like family. She is legitimately his little sister, which he says a lot, but we don't get to see that. And so that's unfortunate. I wish they'd taken more time to build their relationships before we jump into the quest, because then we're focusing so much on, they almost lean more into like Percybeth, Easter eggs and whatever else, and building up on that. And I'm like, yes, their relationship is wonderful and I love it, but you have 5 seasons to do this. You gave yourself 1 episode to build up Luke and Annabeth's relationship, which is a very key part of the plot line, especially for Annabeth's character. And you gave yourself 1 episode to do that. And then in the last episode, we get them talking, and then their relationship is just totally destroyed and their trust is gone and he betrays her. And so like there wasn't much of a relationship at all. So it was a little, that aspect was a little unfortunate. I mean, hopefully through getting Thalia back, and having, because they're leaning into this, having flashbacks, because they had a flashback between Percy and Luke in the last episode. I'm like, you could have, hear me out, had an extra episode at the beginning of the season where that scene is included, and we show Percy training, and we show him and Luke and Annabeth interacting, and we show this and we show that, and that would have been great. And then at the end we have him recalling this, and it makes more sense that he's recalling this. It's like, oh, I've seen this before. So then you don't have to show the entire scene. We have him like a voiceover of Luke reminding him of something or whatever else. And then you have more time to do like the Ares fight, or I don't know. Like, there were just certain choices. Like, overall, this show was great. But there were just certain choices made, especially in the first and the last episodes, that made the beginning and the end a little bit, which is really sad, because the beginning introduces you, and the end is supposed to be this climax and a little bit of resolution, but like not total resolution. So the fact that those are the 2 portions of the story that missed is not a good thing. It's really not a good thing. If you want to have a part of the series that doesn't quite hit as hard as the rest of it, it's probably the middle. Because if you have just a great beginning, that's going to draw people in. And if you have a great ending, that's going to keep them hooked. But then if you have a kind of a little bit of a in middle, they're going to probably keep going because of the wonderful, like the great beginning that gets them hooked. that's going to carry them through the middle of the maybe not so great middle to a great ending. That's going to be a lot more appealing to me, I think, than having a series where the middle 2 to 3 episodes are just absolutely fantastic and I love them, and then having a more of a meh beginning and end. I kept at it because I am a Percy Jackson fan and I appreciated all of the things that they added in, and I wanted to make this video because I wanted to talk about it and I want to rant about it because that's who I am. But for someone who's not already invested in the story and having kind of a meh beginning and a meh end like that, and maybe I'm being nitpicky, maybe it's not as bad as I'm making it out to be, but having a meh ending and a meh beginning is not a great format. Because as good of a middle as you have, if you end it not great, that's not going to keep someone hooked and ready for a next season. Like, I can be going great with a story, and then all of a sudden it has an ending, and I don't like how the ending plays out. I'm not going to keep going in that series, or I'm not going to buy that book or whatever. I'm not going to spend in money and invest time in something if I don't think it's worth it. And the ending really is what keeps someone hooked and makes them think, oh, whatever's coming next is worth it. I'm just saying. But yeah, that's probably the most disappointing part of the series. Like, the irritation comes from them not putting Percy in the water and having him interact and showing that connection. The disappointment is how the beginning and the end went. Like, 2 episodes. You have the budget for 2 episodes. You can totally do that. You're Disney. Just add 2 episodes, draw things out, make characters more likable, build the relationships, build the stakes, and then don't cop out on writing in the Zeus scene, because I think that really was what it was, a little bit the performance. Like, the performance was so intense and it was great, and I think Zeus's actor really did great. But the way the writing was, and just a little bit of how he portrayed it, I guess, trying to get this to, I don't know, something was off. And I think part of it was in the writing and part of it was in Zeus's actor's performance. And maybe that was because of director being whatever, but I'm not going to pin it all on the actor. But something about that scene wasn't quite hitting right with me. And that is not a great thing, because it's it's like the climax of the story where Percy is trying to stop the war between the gods. Poseidon saving his life and surrendering the war for his son's sake. That was incredible, and I loved it. I loved Poseidon coming in and going, nope, I surrender. Just don't kill my son. That was a wonderful scene, and I loved it. But something about the scene leading up to it and getting to the point where Zeus goes, you know what, and tries to kill him, something about that seemed off. Yeah, I don't know. But I feel like I'm bringing up all these negative things. I'm being nitpicky, guys. Overall, it was very enjoyable to watch. But I'm being nitpicky for the sake of being nitpicky. I am such a critic when it comes to book to movie, show, whatever adaptations. I am such a skeptic little nitpicker. It's yeah. Sometimes I do it to be funny. Sometimes I just legitimately, little details bother me. This is a great example of little details bothering me. I might be overreacting, but that is how my brain works, and that is how I work, and that is how my enjoyment works. There are just little things can ruin something for me. And sometimes big things don't. Like, if it's big enough that I can just go like, let me just skip that scene, or let me just not look at the screen because they're doing all of the crap on it, and just whatever. Sometimes that's less irritating to me than just the little things being wrong. I don't know. I'm sorry. to all of you who just absolutely love the show. I'm sorry I'm being such a nitpick. But yeah, let's get out of the negative nitpicking, and we're gonna get into the parts that I really, really enjoyed. I absolutely loved episode 4 and 5. Episode 3 wasn't bad. It was getting out of the kind of the wonky pacing of the first 2 episodes and getting more into that. We're just gonna take one episode, focus on this little arc thing that's happening, this enemy. We're gonna take one episode, focus on this part of the journey. Take this episode, focus on this part of the journey. That was a great pacing schedule. Like, that was great pacing because, like, we're gonna focus on one thing this episode, and we're gonna get into that, and we're gonna do something absolutely amazing with it. And it was great. Medusa, like, we didn't get a whole lot of we didn't get to see Medusa a whole lot. I don't know how her look, I feel like could have been better. She probably could have looked better. But she didn't look bad. Also, just her, that was another thing that initially I went, was they knew right away, like, oh, this is Medusa. We're walking into Medusa's lair. They knew that right away, which I initially went, no lead up, no, like, who is this? And then having the realization, oh my gosh, it's Medusa. Shut your eyes. We got to figure out how to chop her head off. They knew right away, but the way they were kind of running the plot and whatever, it worked. Because then they have this whole like conversation with Medusa, because she is right now like being the lesser of 2 evils. Like, I'm not going to kill you. I'll protect you from this fury, but I'm going to sit here and I'm going to try and tear your little quest apart. And I'm going to try and turn you against each other. And then when that doesn't work, I'm just going to straight up kill you and turn you into statues. That was well done. And when I got over the initial, like, oh, there's no lead up to them realizing it's Medusa and seeing what they were doing with it, I'm like, I'm okay with this. This is good. Yeah. Also, it was clever how they used Annabeth's invisibility hat to feed her and chop her head off. That was clever. And then, season 4, the St. Louis Arch. I just like the Chimera in general as a monster. It's such a cool monster. I love it. I torture my character, my Percy Jackson fanfic with it. That's fun. Go check that out if you want to find out how. But I like the Chimera in general. And honestly, the way, like, the CGI in the show, like, I saw people making fun of it, but it's really not bad. There's definitely certain things where I'm like, that's, like, not great. But overall, it's not bad. Like, the Chimera looks great. I like the Chimera's look. And the episode was just wonderful. It was wonderful. We have them seeking sanctuary in the St. Louis Arch and having this whole explanation of it, like, being a sanctuary, like a temple to Athena, because one of her children built it as, like, this monument to architecture, which is a huge thing with Athena. So it's basically a temple of Athena. And so they seek sanctuary there because Percy gets stabbed with the Chimera tail and poisoned, and I love it. Again, my sadist is coming out. He's literally dying from Chimera venom. So they seek sanctuary in the St. Louis Arch. Come to find out that because of the Medusa head, Athena's kind of mad at Annabeth. And she's like, you know what? I'm not going to give you sanctuary. Boop. And so they can't actually escape from the Chimera there. And then I was actually very scared for a minute because they had Annabeth staying behind and going, okay, you guys go, get down the staircase. I will hold off the Chimera. Go. And I'm like, no, that's not okay. That's not how it goes at all. You can make certain changes. You can take some creative liberties, and that's okay. But this is not. Like, Percy fights the Chimera. That's not okay. It's like, you can't switch them. Yeah. But then they pull the whole cool switcheroo where it's like, here, take my sword. And she's like, okay. And nope, I'm doing this. And Shove locks him in the stairway. It's great. So we have a dying Percy fighting a Chimera, and it's great. It's so great. We also get the scene where he finally breathes underwater, which I loved. I love he's like sitting there holding his breath and just like, what do I do? What do I do? I can't get out. I'm stuck on the bottom of the river. And this nymph thing going and pulling a quote from his mom going, just breathe, Percy. And then we have a moment where he goes, and then the episode ends. And I was like, yes, there is hope. His powers will be a thing. It's great. And then it didn't get addressed again. He never breathed underwater again. And he didn't really get to interact with water anymore. He used his powers like twice after that. I'm just like, which I get, he doesn't use them a whole lot in the first book anyway, so it's fine, but like, yeah. But it was just great. I loved that episode. It was so good. And then the 5th episode, which is one where Ares shows up. So already off to a great start. And then, so it's the one where they go after his shield. They do take some liberties, they change it. Instead of being, I don't remember actually how it went in the book exactly. It's been a while since I've read Lightning Thief. But instead of whatever trap that was, it's first go through the love tunnel. There's a giant destructive waterfall down there. So you have to jump out of the boat to get over here. And they end up tying it into the, like all these legends, the mythology of Hephaestus, which is I very much appreciate that they use actual mythology stuff when they're doing these changes. That is very much appreciated, and I like it. And that is like a good kind of creative liberty that they take, is bringing more of the mythology into it. I like that. So having it be this throne that Hephaestus made to trick Aphrodite in order to win the hand of, in order to trick Hera in order to get the blessing to marry Aphrodite. Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. I was like, that's a cool change. I'm okay with this change. And then Percy, again, sidelining Annabeth going, no, I'm expendable. You focus on the quest. You can do this. I can't. I've been doing this for like 2 weeks. I have no chance of getting to the underworld. You do this. Sits in it. He gets coated in gold. It looks so cool. Him getting coated in gold is so cool. The scene is fantastic. That scene like broke me. It was so good. Him just sitting there, just like, Percy, get up. He's like, I can't get up. And so there's just all this gold creeping up his body. And he's like, I promise you, I'm okay. I'm okay. And then all of a sudden he gets cut off because the gold reaches his face. And so it's like, and then he, the scene was wonderful and I loved it. Oh, and then Annabeth going, I can't leave him here. I'm just gonna just drops Ares, like leaves Ares' shield, like whatever. I need to get Percy out of here. And showing their relationship growing that way, it was wonderful. I loved the scene so much. I enjoyed it so much. We got the slightly disappointing casting for Hephaestus, but whatever, it was one scene, and they make it out, and it's great. The Lotus Casino one, I don't know. I was never the biggest fan of the whole Lotus Casino part of it. Like, the idea of it is cool, but I was never the biggest fan of that. And of course, that's when we got Lin-Manuel Miranda. Hermes, and I legitimately have no idea how to feel about him. So yeah. Beginning and end, unfortunately, were a little bit more meh to me. They were still good, but they weren't as great as the 4th and 5th episodes. The 4th and 5th episodes were literally the peak of the entire season, and I loved them so much. The casting is like very 50-50 with me. I don't know how to feel about half of them yet, and some of them I'm coming to terms with the very extreme color palette change, and then there are like 4 that I absolutely love and are great and just awesome. And yeah, and then it's there should have been 2 more episodes, guys. They should have just made it around 10 episodes. It's a nicer number than 8 anyway. I don't know. Just little things. I'm being nitpicky. Yeah. Guys, I just did an hour-long video by myself What is happening? You can tell I'm very into this fandom. Anyway, I should really stop now. If you would like to keep ranting about this and whatever else, sharing your opinions in the comments, feel free to do that. Like, please do that. We can nerd out and whatever else. Be respectful of each other's opinions, because we're not gonna bash each other. It's not okay. Yeah. So yeah, share your thoughts in the comments about the show, requests, whatever. I post videos here every Wednesday and Saturday, and I'm posting chapters for my audiobook channel on Thursdays. I'll see you all next time.